Okay, so not to be deceptively simple, you're like, man, we might get out in 30 minutes. There's only one page. There's nothing on the back. No, I brought a book. So I was like, I'm not putting big block quotes. I'll just read a few things out of the book that will be helpful. So before I get into the notes, let's talk about this, because this is really, really important. And this will not be complete dialogue discussion, because I don't have a lot of questions in notes. But when we think about labor, in fact, I teach this a lot at the university, especially at the graduate level. The greatest divides in the world, historically, among all people groups, are divides about labor. In fact, if you don't think so, okay, you could even think so. So, Jonathan, you mean in modern America, the greatest divides we have are on labor, more than Democrat, Republican, more than gender, male, female, more than regional or racial? Yes, the greatest divides are labor. And many historians, I could start citing off books, many historians see this too. And so when we think about labor, in fact, we could just say it this way: the two main geopolitical theories in the world when it comes to labor is communism, capitalism, and communism, socialism. That's the two current big thoughts on labor. And without getting into a full-blown lecture, what do those say? Well, capitalism, and I'm not going to quote Adam Smith this morning, but capitalism says we have self-interest. Hopefully we can have opportunity to work. We work for a wage. That wage we use via self-interest to purchase the things we desire, services, products, etc. And we compete, so competition is the center of capitalism. Communism, socialism, well, socialism is the first step. Give up all your property to the state. The state then allocates, redistributes, and controls all factors of the economy, which economy just means managing your household. That's all that word means. So you're all economists, right? Yeah, because you manage your household. Now, if working, so as some writers are going to say, competition is one side, capitalism, versus coddling, distribution, state control or granting of resources. And the end, now, this might give you a headache. I won't go into full lecture mode here. The end of both of these could be very destructive and damaging. And you might say, well, Jonathan, you already said in class at times you're a neoclassical economist. You teach economics. You think about the world and how it works in competitive ways. Yeah, but if I'm a capitalist and I'm conscienceless, let's say I have no conscience, and I own a couple of small businesses. Let's say in my businesses, I just see you as labor tools to make me more, and I don't care anything about you. It's just what you can do to make me more. Like greed's at the core. Capitalism is not good. We'll destroy each other. Not good. It's also not good and never worked if we gave all of the capital and all of the resources to the state, and at some point they're just going to release that control. They're never going to do that. People won't do that. So the reason I'm laying out such a big geopolitical, does God care about how Israel works? Yes. In this passage, and I've brought Merida's book, which is to me the easiest one of the books I had to just share some basic ideas when it gets into the text. God cares about us working. There's different arrangements. Now, slavery in biblical times is a bit different, but slavery in humanity, the most aggressive and egregious type of slavery is people trying to control or own other people. That's not what's being referred to in our text today. This is a rather voluntary, temporary setting of labor or servitude, indentured servitude situation, which also is part of our founding. Before slavery in America, there's indentured servitude. Is there indentured servitude in the world today? Of course. Is some of that voluntary? Yeah. If you have bills and owe somebody, then you're indentured to them. You might say, well, I could live where I want, do what I want within reason. Sure, that's also the case here. People that couldn't afford or didn't have land to work for themselves, they would have to work for others. And so that's the arrangement And I just want to make that distinction really clear, because sometimes when I read the Bible, or when we read the Bible, and you hear the word slave, what are you thinking? Well, someone owns someone else. Now, in war, did Israel or other nations, where did Israel just come from? Egypt. And Egypt owned them as slaves. Was that voluntary? No, that's not voluntary. So, in no way did God want Israel to begin to demonstrate or exhibit slavery that was involuntary and owning other people. And I won't, because I teach American history a couple times a year, I won't get into, well, in American history, how did slavery, well, there's a lot to it. I won't get into that this morning. And I don't even want to juxtapose it. I just want to say that it's not the same thing. And that's in the notes here in the beginning. So as we get into Exodus 21 and beyond, God is really laying down some civil guidelines for the people. In work, and Truth Project and other lessons, I know Authentic Manhood got into this too. What will you spend the majority of your life doing? Working. What's the second greatest number of hours you will spend in your life other than working? Sleeping. And you say, well, let's just reduce sleep. No, sleep is one of the 4 things you need to stay alive. So you do need to sleep, but who needs to work? All. Who did God create to work? All. So I won't get into a rant. If any of you talk to me, or when I was a banker years ago, often Christian people would come to me and say, Jonathan, how much, it's nice having Fisher back here, he's probably heard this exact same narrative of working in finance and investing in things. Can you help me save enough money that I don't have to work anymore? And I'm like, whoa, what's wrong with working? Well, it's hard and we don't like to do it and we want, no, your desire is wrong. Work is not bad. Work is good. God created us to create and to work and to cultivate. So if your vision of the perfect world is like, I don't have to work anymore, you're in the wrong church, in the wrong class, listening to the wrong guy. I do not espouse any of that. I think we should work until our last breath, till the end. I think we should work. And you say, yeah, but that it's such a heavy weight. Well, we'll get into it. God has a plan for Israel that's quite unique, and it is also can teach us many things about commerce and work today. So let's look at Exodus 21, 1 through 11. I'm reading the New American Standard Bible. And you might be like me. My throat is like, you're in a tank top yesterday, you're in a jacket today, tomorrow we'll be in shorts again, and then shortly after Christmas, it may, who knows what's going to happen. So my throat is sore. Let's go to Exodus 21, and we'll read verses 1 through 11. So this is God's instruction, which is wonderful to see for Israel. Now these are the ordinances which you are to set before them, telling Moses what to tell the people. If you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve for 6 years. But on the 7th he shall go out as a free man without payment. If he comes alone, he shall go out alone. If he is the husband of a wife, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall belong to her master, and he shall go out alone. That's talking about the initial person in the beginning. Okay, verse number 5. Excuse me. But if the slave plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out as a free man, then the master shall bring him to God, and then he shall bring him to the door of the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him permanently. Verse 7. So this is now for female workers, is the next emphasis. If a man sells his daughter as a female slave, she is not to go free as the male slaves do. If she is displeasing in the eyes of her master, who designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed, meaning bought back by the family and freed, basically. He does not have the authority to sell her to foreign people because of his unfairness to her. And the unfairness is obvious, I think, from the context. Verse 9, if he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her according to custom of daughters, basically making her a daughter of the family. Verse 10. If he takes to himself another woman, that's talking about the son, he may not reduce her food, clothing, or conjugal rights. If he will not do these three things for her, then she shall go out for nothing without payment of money. So again, this is somewhat of a contractual, voluntary working arrangement among the people. And I didn't go into look into studies or say, well, okay, you might think, well, Jonathan, how many people in Israel does this apply to? Well, I think it kind of like in the modern economy. I think most people, 76% of people, have to work a living, and a majority of those people are even paycheck to paycheck. Does that make sense? So we're working to pay the bills we owe for now. If those bills become too much for us to pay, then we would be into an indentured situation. And those could happen for various reasons. And back in this time, y'all tell me, has the Industrial Revolution happened? These people are in factories, in the Sinai Peninsula? No, they're doing what? Farming, herding. Yeah, that's what the people are doing. It's very agrarian, etc. So the laws of workers in verses 1 through 6, again, slave means worker. It will help us to use maybe that terminology. And the connotation to the present setting, let's say, what were they supposed to do with the male worker if they were indentured? What happens on the 7th year? They go free, right? And as we're going to see in the law a bit later, what's going to happen on the Jubilee or the 50th year? All debts are canceled. Yeah, now this is God's instruction that's going to be to Israel, so it's not to the nations around them. How do the nations around them treat people or workers? Probably really like Egypt did, or like the other pagan nations around them. If you conquered someone, what did those people become? Slaves. Now here's a great, and I'm kind of bouncing around, you can tell this morning. Here's a great thought, and actually the most tragic writings in American history I've ever read that are tearful. Like, I can't read them without shedding tears. Before the Europeans even colonized and arrived, Native Americans were here. How did they treat one another? The same way Israel would have before this commandment, the same way Egypt did. Right. So after emancipation, after Lincoln has freed the American slaves, who is still enslaved? Some of the natives to the other natives. And if you read, I'll just paraphrase, if you read some of that writing, the hairs are standing up on my neck and arms even talking about it. The sad people that are like, the president has freed, emancipated, and most of the tribes that were harsh that had slaves began to kill them in mass. I mean, we would just rather kill these people. And some of those women, because the women were the orators of their tribes, some of what the women spoke or were written down is overwhelming. So allowing freedom to others, and in the American setting, us having liberty to make our own decisions is so very important. And so Merida, and I'm going to read a few paragraphs if you'll grant me license to do so, just because I think this is better said. I'll read kind of quick, so listen carefully. Merida says, the first thing we should note, slavery is not like we think about in American history, but people ran small farms, they herded, etc., and the slaves were workers or employees of the business. And a note that he doesn't make here, but I'll interject, the master worked with the other workers. That makes sense too? But this is without wandering off into other thoughts. In this time, unless you're maybe Pharaoh who thinks he's God or something like that, everyone's working. So it's not like Gone with the Wind and someone's like in the big house and everyone's working and someone's like chilling out. That's not the case then or in most of history. So further, when we think about the contract of work, further, variables made this situation different from the American situation of slavery because Moses, through God, made it voluntary, meaning people hired themselves into the service of others, usually because of debt, and they worked hard in exchange for room, board, honest wage. Involuntary slavery was forbidden And we're going to see that next week in verse 16 of chapter 21. So that'll be the part of the cliffhanger for next week, the next time. But this type of service was temporary. The slave worked 6 years and then they went free. Hebrew slaves were given a sabbatical. Further, they did not leave empty-handed, and also Deuteronomy 15 points that out. So they earn a wage, they're paid, they're compensated, that's how they pay their debt off, and they may even be able to take resources with them net, like a net amount above what they owed. The form of service was also civil. Could the master abuse the slave? No. There's violation of the law in that, and we're going to see that at the end of Exodus 21, verses 26 and 27. So receiving slaves or workers could be seen as benevolent, because what could the master do? Well, the master could free them of their debt. The master could invite them to live and stay with them if they so desired. That's possible after the 6 years or even before the 6 years are up. It's also not an oppressive, like we think of racially oppressive slavery in American history or in the modern. In fact, and let me pause real quick to say this. How many of us realize slavery per capita is the largest in 2025 than any point in the world's history? Yeah. So when I say per capita, say out of 100 people, how many are enslaved? I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. Let's say in American slavery, it was 2 out of, it wouldn't be, let's say out of thousands, it wouldn't have been that high. So out of 100,000 people in American population, there were a few hundred out of every 100,000 were slaves. Well, today per capita in the world, there's exponentially more times that through the sex slave trade, which is so should slavery bother us? Not voluntary work for others, but actually trying to own, control, or destroy someone, exploit someone for your own self. Yeah, that should bother us. It should still bother us. It's at an all-time high. So what then would be the consideration if it's not oppressive? Instead, if it's something that's voluntary, and Merida gets into this real quick. So a final difference is in the form of service, that there was the sanctity of the family is at the core of the whole model, and that's God's design for Israel. So American slavery often separated families, and that's true, and that's horrific. I could just start quoting many books to you, just many, which is not okay what happened in American slavery or other parts of the world's slavery. But this is not the system that God delivered. We read that if he arrives alone, he is to leave alone. If he arrives with a wife, his wife is to leave with him. What could the owner or the business owner not do? Break up, damage, or separate the family on their own. Now, it is, I'm just going to paraphrase this next part, so I'm not reading it just straight from the text so much to you. What happens if the man comes voluntarily to work, gets married in the process, and has a wife and children during those, say, 6 years of work? If the man is freed and can leave, can the wife leave too? She's under obligation to continue working till her term is up. You see how that would be disruptive to the work, right? Because work is like in a cycle, in a period. So that's understood. But what would happen when the female's time was up? They would be free to go. Yeah. So when we think about this, there's 3 possibilities the husband could do, and I'm just being quick here. He could wait for the wife to be free and continue to work there. 2, he could get a good job and purchase freedom for his wife or kids, that's perhaps 2, free the debt if the debt was the reason for the indentured service. Or 3, could commit himself to work permanently for the master, which would do what? And you heard it. Piercing of the ear, right? Yeah. So that would then be a symbol of what? Covenant, agreement, contract to that work arrangement. Would that business owner be able to abuse that person? Never. That's not in mind at all. In fact, there was many things to prohibit. The law would prohibit a harsh or difficult treatment upon any worker or upon any person that was serving a family. And so we'll do this later in Exodus. there's many laws and rules, as we'll see, that deal with outsiders, people that are not part of Israel. They're not Jewish people. And so part of that kind of plays into this lesson this morning too. The piercing of the ear at the doorpost illustrates a beautiful picture of service and might be what David referred to in Psalms 40 when he said, "In sacrifice and offerings you have not delighted, but you have given me an open ear." Yeah. So again, worship without a lifelong commitment to obedience is no worship at all. David said that God desires lifelong love and obedience to him. So let's look now at the rest of the just brief notes here, and then we'll get to the second section. So Wiersbe adds to this too on the role of servants, and this is even for verses 1 through 11. The temporary nature of the labor arrangement had protections and human dignity as a foundation. And I think that's true today. Like today, or let me ask this question, see who we have in the audience. How many of us have worked for someone else before? Just about all of us. How many of us have ever been in a job that we owned and people worked for us? Okay. How did you want to be treated when you worked for someone else? With respect, with dignity, with care, consideration? Sure. Some of us might be like, well, I wanted it a lot easier, and I wanted more time off, and I wanted more money. Okay, now let's turn the coin over. How many of us have had other people work for us? How did you see those people that worked for you? Squares and circles? I just need, anyone will do. I just need to fill a spot. You ever been treated that way at work? How'd that make you feel? Oh, man, this is being recorded. I'm going to behave. Yeah, I've been treated that way before. I've even been told that. Schultz, you realize you're replaceable. I'm like, oh, man, that doesn't make me feel very good. I don't need to be the all-star and the only, but everyone's work is important or it's not. And everyone is important or they're not. And so God's teaching Israel something about dignity, and I want to make a clear distinction here, and I think it's also in the text. Women, and I put this in the notes, are women treated even in Israel here as lesser, greater, or equal to men? It depends on what we're saying. Do women have the same choices that men do in this context? No, not necessarily. Because in this time and much of human history, who is the person that's providing for themselves and family? Usually the male is. But there's a whole nother sense of disposition and care and kindness toward the female. How is the female to be treated? Or let me just ask you this if you're listening carefully. How did it talk about the man being treated in the work arrangement? And how did it talk about the woman being treated in the work arrangement? What word do you hear with the women that's key? Starts with a D. I don't see anywhere in here that the owner, that the male voluntarily works for them, they should treat them as a son. But how should the female be treated? As a daughter. Do you see that? How should daughters be treated? Oh, I don't have daughter. I have 6 nieces and 1 nephew. I'll just talk about my nieces. How should nieces or nephews be treated? They should both be respected. There's something though about care, consideration, and setting aside specially the female or the daughter. Does that make sense? And again, in this counseling psychology program I'm in, the greatest relationship in the home, beyond the parents, is the father-daughter relationship. It's what keeps the social fabric together. Does that make sense? Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. 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 When, and again, I'm just speaking generally. I don't know the people or the situation you're talking about. This is what I think in general. A father that cares for his daughter properly knows who she is and will not only care for her husband appropriately if she marries, but that hand that rocks the cradle does change the world. That makes sense? Is the father-son relationship important? Or the father-mother relationship important? I do think so. What's the highest degree of dignity that we have in the family unit? The father to the daughter. There's no doubt. And that care, compassion, and kindness, this shapes the world. So if, and I mean, in different jobs I've had in different industries, men that worked under me was a certain way. I could kind of relate to the men more, because like with the guys, and I'm not picking on this, but like, how are the guys thinking or working? It's like, what are you thinking of, or what's going on? Well, usually one thing, probably hunting, fishing. Like there's like one, either thinking of nothing or thinking of one thing. How are the ladies thinking, even in this room? About a bunch of things, and they're connected. And this was always, I was like, huh. When I was in banking, it was like largely women working there. So when I had a staff of ladies working for me, I was always like, okay, they already know and are communicating without words. I'm definitely outnumbered and outthought of. So like, let's just be to the point, high dignity and respect. And so how should women be cared for? And again, I'll read Merida just for a second. So Merida is going to show us the responsibility of the business owner or the master, as they're using it here, toward the female should be the same as a father to a daughter. And that almost goes in every way, especially if there's an arranged marriage, which was the most common way of marriage happening in this time. Yeah.
Well, it relates to her comment.
Right.
But on the other hand, a long time ago, I used to work, and it could take place, but I learned something. Because when I was doing a job, I mean, I could do the job, bam, it's over. But I had a new boss that I wasn't used to. And it was a female. And first thing I'm thinking, you don't know nothing. I've been doing this job, blah, blah, blah.
That's mistake number one. Usually you're like, wait a minute. Yeah.
Put me in my place.
Yeah.
Real quick, because she said, you have this many years experience.
Yeah.
I got you beat by 5 years, and I'm trying to tell you how to do the job.
Yeah.
Well, struggles.
Yeah.
I think you don't know nothing.
Yeah.
She got me there, and she put me in my place.
Yeah.
And the other comment I was going to say was, from the first experience I learned, it still goes on today.
Yeah.
Guys, when they are working with women, they think I'm Mr. No.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Yeah, there, and to be fair, to be kind, because this is a huge topic, and I feel like Exodus is telling us some important things. I'm kind of bouncing into rabbit trails in other spaces. Sphere sovereignty with Kuyper's writings, or how should men and women, how should this work in the church, in the home, in the state, in commerce, or in the field of work? I think what we're seeing in this lesson, just to be clear, is God's telling, through Moses, his people, in the realm of work, this is how men and women should be treated. And so we don't want to confuse that with other things. Does that make sense to y'all? Yeah. But what I've said so far is 1,000% true. Men and women think differently, they work differently, and there are certain things, and I just want to be real clear on this, there are certain things that we can't confuse, distort, or try to equalize. It won't work. It won't work. Because there's a difference. And so in this difference, especially with women, and I put this in the notes, it's very important. Women in the Bible are very special. Well, all people are very special, but women more, in a unique, important way, of all ages, from children to young adult to adulthood to older adults, and women should be highly respected and revered. If societies disregard women, then the destruction that will come upon them is insufferable. And a lot of historians, especially military historians, say this. This is also, and I'm not going into arguments here, but like, why shouldn't women be in combat with men? Well, this is not a good idea. If men were, and I'm speaking very generally, if men were to fight, kill, or try to destroy women the way they do one another, no society will survive. And I could go back to Plutarch through the Peloponnesian. We could go through ancient war all the way to right now. You don't want there to be that, and that's not to say there's women that can fight and beat up men. There's maybe special forces. I understand the argument. I'm just saying in general, women need to be carefully revered. And so here's what Merida is going to say, which I like this, and I think in human history what I'm saying resounds. So at first glance it sounds harsh that women would go into servitude. And now let me say this too, because I've had students ask me this at times. Well, Jonathan, women have only more recently had to start working, I'd say, well, no. Men and women have always been working, even before this part of Exodus. So the necessity or impetus of women working has been ever since, I think. Why did God allow men to sell their daughters to service of another in a work relationship? This is not slavery, involuntary, and the person owned or try to control every facet of the person's life. We don't know all the details, and the scripture doesn't go into full details here, but the things that we do know is that the person that had authority, usually in this time of history, which would have been a man or a male figure, was to treat that female as a daughter. If they were of age and able to be improved by marriage, then that would often transpire, perhaps. And arranged marriages were very common, the most common way people would get married in this time. A poor man could send his daughter to a rich home in hopes that she would be part of that family. She could also be designated for the master's son, verse 9, perhaps. The lady received protection in three ways, and this is the key of what I wanted to read to you in this section. If it didn't work out, the family could ransom her, and we're going to see that later in Ruth, right? Yeah. So a redemption could happen, perhaps that could happen. So that would be one possibility, and she could not be sold to foreigners, because how would foreigners treat the female, perhaps? It would not be the way that God instructed Israel to treat women in general. Number two, if she became engaged to one of the sons, she was treated as a daughter, and she would have full rights as a free citizen. Now, as we know today, just like back in biblical times, what if that happened and didn't work out? Could that be a possibility? It could be a possibility. Would the woman be mistreated in that situation among Israel? No. If the engagement ended, the man had the duty of providing food, clothing, and marital rights. And then too, the daughter or the female is in an arrangement of work that's gonna free her at a point. Now, and wow, there's just a lot from the New Testament and much in the Old Testament too, and even history. How important has it been for women and men as they marry and provide for one another? What happens if the woman is older and a widow and can't work anymore, basically, if we go to the New Testament instruction? What should happen in that case? Well, first her family should care for her. If there is no family, who should care for her? We, right? Yeah. So, and should that happen for a man too? The Bible's not as explicit, but I do think so. You could be a widower with no family. Who should help you? Your family, the body of Christ should. So in the final point here, and I agree with Merida 100%, God loves his daughters and wanted to treat them lovingly and fairly. God still cares for ladies physically and emotionally and expects them to defend and expects men to defend them and treat them lovingly and justly. I mean, without any reservation. Yeah.
The first thing I was thinking about when you were saying that,
Mm-hmm.
well, we would consider a slave before the guy with the many coats of many
Oh, sure, Joseph. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He served the king, and
Yeah.
the king turned around and did him right, and
Yeah.
next thing he got a family, and his family was taken care of. And
Yeah.
the other one I'm thinking about is, I think the widow was named Esther, and there was a woman that took care of her when she got older, and
You think of Ruth, uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
she
Mm-hmm.
married the guy with the
Mhm.
landowner
Right.
because of
Mhm.
what she did.
Boaz, the kinsman redeemer. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and two, like to make a note on what John just said. So Joseph is sold into slavery or voluntary service among Israel? No, his brothers want to kill him, but some of the kind brothers say, let's just let him be exploited by the foreign people that'll take him away. And where were they going? To Egypt. Did God have a plan for Joseph? Yeah. In the pit, when they take him out of the pit and sell him into slavery. And that was not voluntary slavery, was it? So this is a distinction. And like the Bible, even in the Old and New Testament at times, uses the word slave. I think the greatest consideration that we should have, and other people may throw this, sometimes students throw this at me or even other faculty. I can't believe you read the Bible or believe that, Jonathan. It's filled with slavery, and that God is for slavery. And again, they don't know who they're talking to when they're talking to me, because I've got 20 or 30 big books at home, anthologies on sermons from the 17 and 1800s. Now, careful, church, not us personally, but did the church use slavery at times to angle involuntary slavery the way it was happening in this country? At times, not okay. Yeah. So, the voluntary or not, the points of freeing the worker, the points of high respect and not damaging the family core unit are central in this part of Exodus and can't be overlooked. Yeah. So my instruction would be, let's not get hung up on the term slavery in this sense as it's voluntary and as it is something that is released or the person is freed from. And today too, and I know Rusty and David and I and others, some of you I'm sure, I've read books that use the modern racial divide in the United States to basically teach Marxism in light of anti-racism. I don't know if you've read, like, I was shocked when I started first reading this. I'm like, what critical race? And some of these theories are like, all white people are racist and bad and they're unredeemable. They should just be destroyed. I'm like, when I read Marx, he was saying, and finding a bunch of disgruntled people to buy into and then advance that, not hard to do usually in the world. So just keep those things in mind. What will we get to next as we're in our final minute? The view of labor won't go away, because people working that were people of Israel as they're going through the Sinai Peninsula toward the Promised Land, there's going to be work till they get to the Jordan River, and there's going to be work beyond the Jordan River. And as I was reading in my Bible this morning from Ezra, as he's looking back, there was work done to rebuild the temple. There was work done to serve God. There's work to be done today. Don't see work as a four-letter word. Instead, we see it as an opportunity to show respect one to another and to display God's good work in us. So all that our hands have to do, may it be done as unto the Lord, right? Yes, exactly. So next time we're going to look at God's justice and a continued part of chapter 21. I hope you're able to be here for that. Let's close in prayer. Lord, thank you for this wonderful lesson on work. And in my mind's eye, I can imagine as Moses gave this instruction to Israel, the millions of people, literally, that would be instructed, and they would find comfort in the work of their hands and see the value of it and see the hope and the prospect of the work that needed to be done, and even delighting in the work that they were doing. And I know that resonates with me. Some of my happiest days are filled with very hard, arduous physical or mental work, teaching or farming. And this is why you've made us, Lord. And I pray that this morning you would teach us great lessons from this part of chapter 21 on work, because it fills so many of our waking hours. And I pray that you would remind us about this lesson in the coming weeks and months as we labor to see that as an opportunity and even as a delight before you. In Jesus' name, amen.